The silence broke first. A child's scream pierced the humid Las Vegas night, not a scream of anger, but something worse. Something broken. The sound of a small body struggling for air, gasping, choking, fighting against nothing at all. 3-year-old Emma Bianchi lay crumpled on the concrete floor of an abandoned warehouse near the industrial sector, her blonde curls matted with sweat, her pink nightgown twisted around her small frame like a shroud. Her lips had turned the color of slate. Her chest barely rose at all. She had wandered away during a family gathering 6 blocks from here, and no one had noticed for 17 minutes. But someone heard her. Aria Sinclair was walking home from the Whitfield estate, where she had spent the last 8 hours on her hands and knees scrubbing marble floors in a black and white maid's uniform that had been purchased for $32 at a discount store. The humidity clung to her skin like a second skin, and her feet ached in a way that felt permanent. She had $5 left in her pocket. $5 to her name. $5 until her next paycheck on Friday, for days away. That was when she heard it. Not a scream. A wheeze. A rattle. The sound of a child's body shutting down, one breath at a time. Aria didn't think. Her body moved before her mind could catch up. She ran toward the sound, her worn shoes slapping against concrete, her breath coming fast. The warehouse door hung open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. Inside, darkness swallowed everything. She stood at the threshold, eyes adjusting, her heart hammering against her ribs like something trapped. There. A shape on the floor. Small. Impossibly small. Aria ran to the child and knelt down. Emma's eyes were half closed, her body rigid, her throat producing only tiny, terrible sounds like a broken instrument. Aria's hands moved without thought, tilting the child's head back, sweeping one finger into that small mouth, feeling the sticky mass of vomit blocking the airway. She cleared it away, gentle but urgent, and within seconds Emma gasped. A real breath. Then another. The child vomited again, this time clearing the path for air. Emma's eyes opened fully, confused, terrified, and alive. Aria held her close, whispering into those blonde curls, it is okay, you are safe now baby, you are safe," her voice shaking with something between relief and terror because she didn't know whose child this was, didn't know what would happen next, only knew that this small girl was breathing and that was everything. That was when the headlights came. 3 black SUVs pulled up across the street, their engines cutting off in perfect synchronization. The doors opened without hesitation. Men in black suits, expensive suits, tailored, immaculate, emerged like shadows given form. They moved with military precision, every step calculated, every movement a statement of absolute authority. Aria's arms tightened around Emma. Fear flooded through her body like ice water. Kidnapping. They would think she was stealing this child. They would think she had taken her from somewhere safe. She was invisible most of her life, unremarkable enough that people forgot her name mid-conversation, but in this moment she was visible in exactly the way that would destroy her. In exactly the way that would land her in a cell. But the first man out of the lead vehicle stopped dead. Giovanni Bianchi stood 6'2" in his charcoal suit, his shoulders filling the space like a threat. His dark eyes were the color of storm clouds, sharp and penetrating, and a scar ran from the corner of his left eye to his cheekbone in a line that spoke of violence survived. He was 39 years old but carried himself like a man who had lived 1,000 years in that time span. His white dress shirt was open at the collar, showing skin bronzed by power and something darker. His hands were large, capable, the kind of hands that seemed like they could crush stone or hold something fragile without leaving a mark. He watched her cradle his niece. And something changed in his face. The fury that had been there, or the tight, controlled rage that always lived behind his eyes, shifted into something else entirely. His jaw clenched, but not from anger. From something deeper. His hands gripped the leather seat of the SUV so hard his knuckles turned white, the gold watch on his wrist catching the streetlight. "Boss," Carlo whispered from the back seat, his tone urgent. "We should." Giovanni raised one hand. Silence descended like a physical thing. He watched Aria check the child's pulse, her fingers trembling but steady. He watched her stroke Emma's hair, rock her gently, whisper reassurances in a voice that shattered with emotion. The maid's uniform was stained with sweat and dust. Her hands were scarred with calluses. Her face was gaunt in a way that spoke of meals skipped, of sleep stolen, of a body running on fumes. And his mind flashed backward. 7 years old. His father's hands. Blood on linoleum. His mother weeping in the corner, useless, terrified. The sound of fists on flesh. The knowledge, absolute and consuming, that no one was coming to help. That he was alone in this. That the world belonged to the strong and the weak were simply obstacles to be removed. He had made a vow that night, lying on that cold floor with his father's footsteps receding. No child would ever suffer alone. Not on his watch. Never again. The woman in the maid's uniform had just saved the life of the child he loved most in this entire world. She had risked nothing but her own safety to do it. She didn't know who Emma was. She didn't know there was a reward, protection, consequence. She had simply heard a child dying and moved. That was all. Just moved. Carlo stepped forward, his hand reaching instinctively for the gun at his hip. The men behind him tensed, ready for something, anything, an order to detain her, to question her, to understand how a street woman had gotten so close to the Bianchi family. But Giovanni stopped them all with a single look. He walked toward Aria, each step deliberate, each movement controlled. She pressed Emma tighter against her chest, her eyes wide, her body braced for whatever came next. "Give me the child," Giovanni said. His voice was deep and solid like an oath, like the sound of something being decided that could never be undone. Aria's hand shook. "I did not take her. She was here. She could not breathe. I know," Giovanni said. He was 3 feet from her now, and somehow his presence made the entire warehouse feel smaller. "You saved her. Give her to me. Your name?" "Aria," she whispered. "Aria Sinclair." He took Emma with a gentleness that contradicted his appearance. The child went to him without resistance, her small arms winding around his neck, her wet face pressing against his shoulder. He held her the way a man holds something precious beyond measure. "Thank you, Aria Sinclair," he said. And when he looked at her, there was something in his eyes that made her catch her breath. "You are not invisible. Not anymore. Not to me." Before we continue, drop a like if this story hits you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it and subscribe so you don't miss what is coming tomorrow. If you have ever felt invisible, if you have ever risked everything to help a stranger, this is your story too. Now let us dive back to understand how Aria Sinclair arrived at this moment, standing in a dark warehouse at 2 in the morning with nothing but $5 in her pocket and a heart that refused to let a child die alone. Now let us go back to the beginning. Let us go back 8 years, to a humid August morning when Aria Sinclair was younger but somehow older, when her life was already smaller than she could have imagined, and her future was being written by someone else's hands entirely. 8 years. 8 years of silence and invisible hands scrubbing floors in a mansion that swallowed her whole. Aria Sinclair stood in the laundry room of Giovanni Bianchi's estate at 5 in the morning, the industrial washing machine humming its endless, lonely song, unfolded his shirts with corners so precise they could cut glass. The black and white uniform hung on her frame like a second skin, worn soft from 3,000 mornings of bending, lifting, cleaning, disappearing. Through the high window, the Las Vegas sky was still dark, still merciful, still kind enough not to show her reflection. Her fingers moved across the cotton with muscle memory that had become her entire language. Fold. Press. Stack. Repeat. The fabric was warm from the dryer, and for just a moment, she let herself pretend it was the weight of something safe, something that belonged to her. But nothing belonged to her. Not the clothes she wore, not the room she slept in, not even the breath in her lungs. In her pocket, folded into a rectangle the size of a postage stamp, lay $5. $5 in crumpled bills was what remained of her existence, what was left after Douglas Hale took his payment yesterday. Yesterday at noon, in a parking garage behind a closed casino, she had handed him $345, every penny she had saved by eating one meal a day, by mending her uniform with thread stolen from the mansion sewing kit, by walking 12 miles to work when the bus cost $2 she could not afford to spend. And he had taken it all. Then he had smiled, his teeth too white against his tan, his grey eyes cold as January stone, and told her the amount owed had somehow increased. Interest, penalties, administrative fees. The debt had a life of its own, growing like a tumor, multiplying every time she paid it down. $63,000. That was what she owed when she arrived in Las Vegas 8 years ago, a 19-year-old girl with her grandmother's recipe book and $200 sewn into the hem of her coat. Now the debt stood at $85,000. The number had a weight to it, like a blade wrapped in ice, like something that would never stop cutting. The shirt she was folding belonged to Giovanni Bianchi. She knew this because everything in this mansion belonged to him, and the scent of his cologne still clung to the fabric, something expensive and dark like burnt amber and storm clouds. She had never spoken to him directly. In 8 years of working in his house, she had only been alone in his presence once, 3 months ago, when he had walked into the kitchen at midnight looking for coffee and she had frozen at the stove like a rabbit caught in headlights. He had simply nodded, made his own coffee, and left. That was the entirety of their interaction. She was nobody to him. Nobody to everyone. But she had watched him with Emma. She had watched from the laundry room window as he carried his daughter on his shoulders through the garden, as the little girl with dark curls and her father's serious eyes laughed so hard she nearly fell backward. She had watched as he knelt in the grass to pick a flower, handing it to Emma like he was presenting her with the crown jewels. She had watched his face transform when he was with her, watched the hardness melt away, watched a gentleness emerge that seemed to belong to a different man entirely. That gentleness reminded Aria of something she had almost forgotten. It reminded her of her own father, the man who had died of pneumonia when she was 14, the man who used to braid her hair with infinite patience, humming old songs in Italian while his fingers moved through the strands. She folded the last shirt and placed it with the others, a perfect stack of 9. 9 shirts for a man who probably had 100 more hanging in his closet. She ran her hand across the top one, that small gesture of tenderness she allowed herself when no one was watching, and then she heard it. The sound of her phone vibrating against the concrete floor where she had left it beside the laundry basket. The message appeared on her cracked screen with the inevitability of a death sentence. Douglas Hale's words burned into the glass. Saturday. Midnight. $85,000 or I sell your contract to Miami. You know what Miami means. Miami meant women in container ships. Miami meant gone, disappeared, erased from existence in a way that made even death look merciful. Miami meant the thing she had been running toward and running from simultaneously for 8 years. Her vision blurred. The laundry room tilted. She gripped the edge of the washing machine to keep herself upright, and for a moment the only sound in the world was the pounding of her own heartbeat, thundering in her ears like hooves, like the end approaching, like time running out. Saturday. That was 3 days away. 72 hours. $85,000 that she did not have, that she could never have, that might as well be 85 million. She had no one to call. She had no one who knew her real situation, the debt, the trap, the scars on her back that Douglas had carved into her skin with the tip of a cigarette and the buckle of a belt when she tried to leave him. The first escape was at 21, before she understood how deep the trap went. He had found her at a bus station with a ticket to California and one change of clothes. The second escape was at 24, when she saved enough money to approach an immigration lawyer. Douglas had learned about it within 3 days. The third time was 6 months ago, when she thought she was ready, when she thought she had enough money to disappear. He had caught her on the highway outside of town, and when she returned to work the next morning, Diana Whitfield, Giovanni Bianchi's cold-blooded business partner, had noticed the fresh bruises and said nothing. Diana noticed everything. Diana said nothing about anything. Aria's hand trembled as she picked up her phone. She should text him back. She should beg for more time. She should offer him something, anything, even though she had nothing left to offer except the breath in her lungs and the years of her life that were no longer hers to spend. Instead, she did something she had not done in 8 years. She cried. Not loud, not dramatically, but silently, with the kind of despair that comes when you finally understand that there is no escape, no plan that will work, no miracle that will save you. Her shoulders shook against the washing machine. Her tears fell onto the floor in a pattern that looked almost like prayer. Outside, the Las Vegas sky was beginning to lighten. 5 o'clock became 5:15. The household would wake soon. Diana would call for her coffee. The chef would arrive and begin preparing breakfast. Giovanni might come down for Emma's lunch before he went to his office, wherever that office was, whatever empire he ran from behind closed doors. The day would continue as all the others had continued, and she would be invisible in it, and no one would know that she was dying. The sound of footsteps above her head, on the first floor, told her the household was stirring. She wiped her face quickly with the back of her hand, stood up straight, smoothed her uniform. The girl who had been crying disappeared. The invisible maid took her place. She picked up the laundry basket with the folded shirts and climbed the basement stairs, and as she climbed, the thought came to her that in 72 hours, she would either have $85,000 or she would cease to exist. What she could not possibly know was that 3 blocks away, a summer storm was already forming over the desert, gathering momentum, and in 2 days and 19 hours, that storm would trap her on a highway with nothing but $5 and a heart that had learned to break silently. What she could not possibly know was that a man named Giovanni Bianchi, a man who ran his empire in the shadows, a man who had learned long ago that violence was sometimes the only language that made sense, was about to receive a photograph of a woman's scared face on a missing persons bulletin circulated among the underground networks that he controlled. What she could not possibly know was that her invisible life was about to collide with his visible power, and that the collision would reshape both of them in ways neither could have anticipated. But the storm was coming. And in storms, hidden things are sometimes revealed. The rain fell like a curse that could not be erased. Aria Sinclair stood at the edge of the highway, her black maid's uniform soaked through, clinging to skin that had learned to flinch at the smallest touch. Lightning split the sky in two. She didn't flinch anymore. Her body had been broken so many times that thunder felt like a lullaby. In her pocket, $5. In her chest, the knowledge that in 72 hours, Douglas Hale would come to collect, and if she didn't have $85,000, she would disappear into the Miami trafficking pipeline, one more invisible woman in a chain that stretched across state lines. The sedan circled back through the downpour. One of Douglas's men. She recognized the car, the low rumble of the engine, the specific cruelty of headlights that refused to pass. She ran. Her feet splashed through puddles, soaked gravel cutting into her palms as she stumbled behind a dumpster, her breath coming in gasps that matched the rhythm of the rain. Cold. So cold. The humidity had broken and the temperature had plummeted, and she was shaking so violently she thought her teeth might crack. Then, 6 headlights in perfect formation. Black SUVs. The kind that meant power. The kind that meant men who didn't ask permission. They slowed as they passed, and Aria pressed herself against the dumpster, making herself smaller, the way she'd learned to do 8 years ago. The lead vehicle stopped. A window rolled down. And in that window sat a man she recognized from the mansion where she'd worked invisibly for 8 years, the man she'd seen holding his niece Emma in the hallway, the man with scars running from his left eye to his cheekbone like a map of violence survived. Giovanni Bianchi looked out at her. His eyes were storm gray and absolutely still. "Get in," he said. Not a question. A command delivered in a voice like thunder wrapped in velvet. Aria hesitated for 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3. The sedan was still circling. The rain was blinding. But something in his voice, the same steady certainty he'd used when speaking to Emma, made her move. She climbed into the SUV. Carlo, sitting in the front passenger seat, handed her a towel without being asked. Giovanni didn't ask questions. He didn't demand explanations. He simply told his driver, "Take us home," and the convoy moved through the night like a knife cutting through the darkness. Aria sat shivering, the towel heavy in her hands, staring at her trembling palms. Giovanni watched her from the corner of his eye. He saw the fear carved into every line of her body. He saw something else too, the way she held herself like she was used to making herself small, used to disappearing, used to being nobody in rooms full of people. It reminded him of his mother. The gates to the mansion opened. Aria's breath caught. "This is where I work," she whispered. "I know," Giovanni said. He brought her through the side entrance where the staff wouldn't see. The hallways were quiet, the household already asleep at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. He led her up the back staircase to the second floor, to a guest room that smelled like fresh linen and expensive things. On the bed, dry clothes. Soft cotton pants, a sweater in cream, underwear still folded in tissue paper. "You'll stay here tonight," Giovanni said. "I can't," Aria whispered. "I have to get back, I have to." "You're staying." His tone left no room for argument. It was the same tone he'd used when giving orders to men in suits. But his eyes held something else. Patience. "You're not going back out in that storm." She nodded. He left. She changed into the clothes. They fit perfectly, which meant Carlo had made calls, sent someone to find her size. She sat on the edge of the bed and cried silently for 20 minutes. For the first time in 8 years, she was in a room where the door locked from the inside, and nobody owned her, and nobody was counting down the hours until they could sell her body to the highest bidder. Morning light came through tall windows. Aria woke panicked, she'd missed her shift. She rushed downstairs in the borrowed clothes, her heart racing. In the kitchen she found Giovanni at the counter with a cup of espresso, his white shirt open at the collar, revealing the dark ink of a tattoo across his chest. Emma was at the table, coloring with fierce concentration, her tongue poking out between her teeth. Emma saw Aria first. "You're the lady from the warehouse." She ran over and wrapped her arms around Aria's legs. Aria froze, unused to affection, unused to being touched without violence preceding it. Giovanni watched. His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the counter. Carlo brought coffee in a porcelain cup and a plate of eggs with toast. Aria tried to refuse. Giovanni pushed the plate toward her. "Eat." They sat in silence except for Emma's chattering about the colors she was using, the flowers she was drawing, the fact that she'd seen a butterfly once and it had wings like stained glass. Finally, Giovanni asked, "Why were you on the highway in a storm?" Aria's hands tightened around the coffee cup. She considered lying. But something about the way he asked, not demanding, not threatening, just asking, made something crack open inside her chest. "I was going to meet someone," she said quietly. "Someone I owe money to." "How much?" $85,000. Carlo, standing by the doorway, went absolutely still. Giovanni leaned back in his chair. He didn't look shocked. He looked like a general surveying a battlefield, calculating every angle. "Tell me," he said. And she did. She told him about Douglas Hale, about the apartment, the fabricated fees, the compounding interest that could never be paid. She didn't tell him about the scars. Not yet. But he listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he asked one question: "Why didn't you go to the police?" Aria laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking. "Men like Douglas Hale don't go to jail. Men like Douglas Hale own half the city." Giovanni's jaw tightened. His fingers drummed once, twice against the counter. Carlo and Sal, who had appeared in the doorway, exchanged a look. The kind of look that meant something was about to change. "Why would you help me?" Aria asked, her voice barely audible. "I'm nobody." Giovanni set down his cup with deliberate slowness. "You saved my niece. That makes you somebody." But what she didn't know was that Giovanni had already decided she would never see Douglas Hale again. That the wheels were already turning. That Carlo was already sending messages through the underground networks that ran beneath Las Vegas like veins beneath skin. 3 hours later, Diana Whitfield arrived at the mansion. She was a woman in her mid-40s, sharp-boned, dressed in a suit that cost more than Aria had earned in a year. Her heels clicked against the marble floors like a countdown. She found Aria in the hallway carrying fresh linens, and she looked her up and down with the particular cruelty of a woman who had never known how it felt to be powerless. "You're the maid who's been staying in the guest wing," Diana said. "Just for the night," Aria replied. "Giovanni has a soft spot for strays." Diana smiled, and her smile was like a blade. "Don't mistake his kindness for anything more. You'll be back scrubbing floors soon enough. That's where girls like you belong." She walked away, her heels striking the floor like a heartbeat. Aria stood frozen, the linens heavy in her arms. Rosa appeared at the end of the hallway. She was another maid, older, kind-faced. "Don't listen to her," Rosa whispered. "Diana's been angry since the day Giovanni brought Emma home. She wanted the power. Instead she got a boss who loves that little girl more than anything else in the world. And now she's seeing him look at you like you matter, and it's eating her alive." That evening, Giovanni found Aria in the library. She was holding her grandmother's recipe book, running her fingers over the handwritten notes in the margins. Recipes in Italian. Recipes in broken English. Recipes that were more than just food, they were memories, survival, love written in measurements and temperatures. "What is that?" Giovanni asked. "My grandmother raised me," Aria said. "She died when I was 17. This is all I have left of her." Giovanni nodded slowly. He understood loss in a way that most people never would. He told her about growing up in South Las Vegas, about his father who used his fists the way most men used words. About being 9 years old and hiding in a closet while his father beat his mother. About the night his mother finally left and took him, and the vow he made that day, no child would ever suffer like he had suffered. Aria listened. She saw the scars he carried too, the invisible kind that shaped how a person moved through the world. "Is that why you were at the warehouse?" she asked. "The night I saved Emma." "She wandered off during a family dinner," Giovanni said. "We were searching everywhere. If you hadn't been there," he stopped. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. They sat in silence. The air between them shifted, subtle and profound. Not yet love. Just recognition. Two people who understood what it meant to survive, to carry weight, to make yourself small so that others could be safe. 3 days passed. The Saturday deadline arrived like a storm cloud. Douglas Hale called Aria while she was in the mansion garden with Emma. Giovanni was watching from the terrace, his presence like a shield. Douglas's voice came through the phone like ice water. "You didn't show," he said. "You didn't pay. You know what happens now." "I need more time," Aria whispered. "No more time. I've got a buyer in Miami. You leave Friday. You're done being my investment. You're being liquidated." The line went dead. Giovanni was beside her in seconds. "What did he say?" She told him. Giovanni's face went stone cold. He turned to Carlo, who had appeared like a ghost. "Find out everything about Douglas Hale. Every property, every account, every person he's ever threatened. Every asset. I want it by tomorrow morning." Carlo nodded and disappeared into the darkness. Diana Whitfield watched from the terrace doorway, her hands clenched into fists. That night, Diana cornered Aria in the kitchen. The house was quiet. The staff had gone to their quarters. It was just the two of them in a room that suddenly felt very small. "You think you're special because Giovanni's protecting you," Diana said, her voice like venom. "You're just another charity case. Another debt he's collecting." "I didn't ask for his help," Aria replied. "But you took it." Diana stepped closer. "And when he's done playing hero, you'll be right back where you started. Or worse." Men like Giovanni don't keep women like you. We keep their businesses running. We keep their empires intact. You're just a distraction. A beautiful, tragic distraction that will be gone in a week." She left. Her heels echoed down the hallway. Rosa appeared again, as if she'd been waiting. "Diana just made a phone call," she said quietly. "To someone. I don't know who. But she looked like a woman who was about to burn a bridge because she couldn't stand seeing it used by someone else." Aria didn't sleep that night. She held her grandmother's recipe book and waited for the storm to finally break. The rain hammered against the diner window like 1,000 fists demanding entry. Aria sat in the corner booth, her fingers wrapped around a coffee cup she couldn't afford, counting the $5 spread across the checkered tablecloth in front of her. $5. That was everything. The waitress, a woman whose name tag read Margaret and whose eyes held the exhaustion of someone who had worked nights for 30 years, approached with the pot. She refilled the cup without charging her. Some people recognize their own kind. Outside, the summer thunderstorm cracked the sky open. Lightning illuminated the empty street in bursts of white that made everything look like a photograph from a life that wasn't hers. Aria thought about Miami. About the women Douglas Hale had already sold into systems from which there was no escape. She thought about disappearing into that darkness and never coming out. Her hands trembled around the cup. She pulled up her sleeve and looked at the burn mark on her forearm from 2 years ago, when Douglas had decided she needed to understand the cost of disobedience. The scar was the color of old rust. It throbbed with the memory of pain. And she thought, maybe it would be easier to just give up. To stop fighting. To let him win because fighting had only ever led to more scars mapped across her body like a geography of suffering. The diner door opened. Giovanni walked in soaked, his suit jacket dark with rain, his hair plastered to his forehead. He stood for a moment, scanning the nearly empty diner with the intensity of a man searching for something he had lost. When he found her, he moved toward her booth without hesitation. He sat across from her without asking permission. "How did you know I was here?" Aria whispered. "I didn't." His voice came out steady, like a man stating facts. "I've been driving around looking for you for 2 hours." She felt something crack open inside her chest. "I can't do this anymore," she said. The words came out broken. "I'm so tired, Giovanni. I'm so tired of running. I'm tired of being afraid." Maybe he's right. Maybe I am just a debt. A problem that needs solving. Giovanni reached across the table. He didn't take her hand. Instead, he placed his palm flat on the table between them, an offering, a gesture without demands. "You are not a debt," he said, and his voice dropped so low she had to lean forward to hear it. "You are not a problem. You are a woman who survived 8 years of hell and is still sitting here, still breathing, still fighting. That is not weakness, Aria. That is the strongest thing I have ever witnessed." She looked at his hand. At the scars on his knuckles from fights he had fought on behalf of people who could not fight for themselves. At the man who had spent weeks protecting her without asking for anything in return, without explaining why. She put her hand in his. He squeezed once, and then his phone rang. The sound cut through the moment like a blade. "Boss." It was Carlo's voice, urgent and tight. "We've got everything. Every account Douglas Hale has ever touched. Every property. Every person he's threatened. And there's more. The FBI has been building a case on Hale for 3 years. Human trafficking, racketeering, wire fraud, conspiracy. They've been waiting for one more witness to flip. One person willing to testify." Giovanni's eyes found Aria's across the table. In them she saw something she had never seen before, a man who had made a choice, and who was prepared for whatever came next. "You willing to talk to them?" he asked her. She thought about Emma's laugh. About Rosa's kindness in the kitchen. About the way Giovanni's men had started treating her with respect, not because she was the boss's charity case, but because the boss had decided she mattered. She thought about her grandmother's recipe book sitting on her nightstand, filled with notes in the margins about love and family and the meals that held memories together. She squeezed his hand back. "Yes," she said. Friday dawn arrived grey and violent. The FBI came at 5:19 in the morning when the city was still sleeping, when darkness hadn't yet released its grip on Las Vegas. 12 agents in tactical gear, their movements synchronized like a choreographed violence, hit Douglas Hale's office building with the force of a hammer striking an anvil. News crews were already positioned outside, cameras rolling, because Giovanni had made an anonymous call to every outlet in the city. He wanted the world to see this. Douglas was at his desk when they broke through the door. His office was all mahogany and leather and the smell of imported cigars, everything expensive and everything built on suffering. He stood when the first agent came through, his hand moving instinctively toward his phone as if he could call someone, as if anyone he knew had power enough to stop what was coming. An agent slammed him against the wall with a force that knocked the breath from his lungs. "Douglas Hale," the agent said, voice flat and official, "you are under arrest for human trafficking, wire fraud, racketeering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and money laundering. You have the right to remain silent." "You can't do this," Douglas screamed. His voice cracked like an animal's final cry before the slaughter. "I have lawyers. I have connections. I have people in this city who owe me everything." "You had connections," the agent said, and snapped the cuffs around his wrists. Past tense. They walked him out of his office, down the elevator, through the lobby where early arriving employees stopped to stare. Douglas's legs were barely functioning, his body understanding before his mind could fully accept what was happening. He was being led out in handcuffs in front of the entire world. The cameras flashed when he hit the street. Cameras everywhere. News vans lined up like vultures waiting for the feast. Douglas's face went white. Not the white of anger or defiance, but the white of a man watching his empire crumble in real time, watching the power he had wielded for so long evaporate like morning mist. He began to shake. "Please," he screamed, pulling against the agent's grip. "Please, I'll give you names. I'll give you everything. Just not 40 years. Please, I'll cooperate. I'll testify. Just not 40 years in prison. Please?" The agent didn't respond. They loaded him into an unmarked car, and the door closed on his pleas. Within an hour, every news channel in Las Vegas was running the footage. By noon, the story had spread across the country. Douglas Hale's face was everywhere, being arrested, being booked, being processed into the system that would hold him for the next 4 decades of his life. 40 years. Aria watched from Giovanni's office, standing at the window that looked out over the city. She saw the news vans outside Douglas's office building, saw the reporters breathlessly describing his downfall, saw the mugshot flash across the screen showing a man she barely recognized. The man who had owned her for 8 years looked suddenly small. "Federal prison," Giovanni said quietly, standing beside her but not touching her. 40-year sentence. He will die in there. Aria felt something she had never felt before. Not joy. Not vengeance. Just the strange, hollow sensation of watching a door close that had been open for so long she had forgotten there were walls. "Too quick," she whispered. "Too easy. Too merciful." "But it's justice," Giovanni said. That afternoon, Diana Whitfield stood in Giovanni's study. She had been trying to undermine Aria for weeks with the systematic precision of someone who had spent years learning how to destroy women quietly. She had spread rumors to the staff, planted doubts in conversations, made calls to her own contacts searching for ammunition. She had been so careful. And yet Giovanni had known everything. He sat behind his desk, not looking at her, reviewing paperwork with the focused attention of a man who had already made his decision and was simply waiting for the right moment to announce it. "I heard about Douglas Hale," Diana said, her voice smooth as polished marble. "Quite the show. Very theatrical. Very unlike you." Giovanni didn't look up. "You made 3 calls to his lawyer last week," he said. Tuesday at 2:14 in the afternoon. Wednesday at 9:33 in the evening. Thursday at 7:33 in the morning. Diana's composure flickered, just for a moment. You tried to help him build a case against Aria, Giovanni continued. Tried to prove she was illegal, undocumented, a liability. You were working with him, Diana. Planning with him. I was protecting you. Diana's voice shook now, the Polish cracking. I was protecting your business interests. Giovanni finally looked at her. His eyes were the color of a storm sky, and they held no mercy. You were protecting your position, he said. He stood, and the act of standing seemed to make Diana take a step backward. There is a difference. A significant one. You have 8 days to clear your office, transfer all accounts, and leave Las Vegas. If you don't, I will make sure that everything you have built is dismantled piece by piece. And Diana? I will be much less merciful than the FBI was with Douglas. Security appeared, Carlo and Sal, moving like shadows, and escorted Diana toward the door. She was trying to speak, trying to recover some dignity, but her voice had become the small, desperate sound of someone losing everything. The household staff watched as she left. They watched from doorways and hallways, and the whispers spread through the mansion like fire. By evening, everyone knew Diana Whitfield had tried to hurt the woman who saved Emma's life. And Giovanni Bianchi had chosen Aria. He had chosen her over 8 years of partnership, over business arrangements, over the careful distance he always maintained from his own feelings. He had chosen her completely. That night, Aria stood on the mansion's balcony overlooking the city. The storm had passed. The sky was clearing, stars beginning to show through the clouds. She held her grandmother's recipe book and thought about the notes in the margins, her grandmother's handwriting, small and careful, talking about love and family and the importance of feeding the people who mattered. Footsteps approached behind her. Giovanni. She knew the sound of him now. Carlo told me something interesting, he said, stopping beside her but leaving space between them. The FBI found records of every person Douglas sold. Every name, every sale, every transaction. They're working to find them all now. To bring them home. Aria felt her throat tighten. How many? 43 women, he said. So far. She closed her eyes. 43 women who would get their lives back. 43 women who would leave whatever hell they had been sold into and start over. She thought about her own freedom, about how strange it still felt to move through a room without fear, to speak without permission. Giovanni, she whispered, and she turned to face him. Why did you do all of this? For me? I was nobody to you. I was nobody to everyone. He stepped closer. The city lights surrounded them, thousands of lights from thousands of lives being lived below, and in this moment it felt like they were the only two people in the world. Because the people who hurt you, he said slowly, believed you were nobody. And that belief needed to be corrected. Not because I wanted to play hero. But because from the moment I found you in the rain, I couldn't stand the thought of a world where you believed it too. She reached for his hand. This time, he took it. Behind them, unseen, Carlo stood in the shadows of the hallway watching the scene unfold. He had worked for Giovanni Bianchi for 15 years. He had seen the man destroy empires, eliminate threats, build something from nothing. But he had never seen him like this. Giovanni's walls, the ones that had been built stone by stone through decades of violence and control, were crumbling. And the strange thing was, Carlo thought, he wasn't fighting it anymore. 6 months after the raid, Emma's 7th birthday party blooms across the mansion garden like a secret garden that finally got permission to exist. The afternoon light falls golden and soft, the kind of light that forgives everything it touches. Aria moves through the space in a blue sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders, helping Rosa arrange white flowers in glass vases. The scars on her back are still there beneath the fabric, permanent as geography, but they have stopped being the story of who she is. They have become the proof of who she survived being. Giovanni watches her from the terrace, his hand wrapped around a glass of wine he is not drinking. Sal stands beside him, and when Sal glances at his boss, he sees something he has never seen before, a man at peace with standing still. For 15 years, Giovanni Bianchi moved like a shark, always forward, always hunting, always hungry. But in this moment, with Emma laughing somewhere in the distance and Aria adjusting a flower stem with the concentration of someone performing surgery, he is simply a man watching the person who saved him without knowing she was doing it. She looks different, Sal says quietly. She is different, Giovanni replies. We all are. Carlo approaches with the birthday cake, 7 layers, each one decorated with the names of Emma's favorite books. Emma had insisted. She wants to remember stories, she said, with the seriousness of a child who understands that stories keep you alive. Giovanni had nodded as if this made perfect sense, and he had commissioned the cake 3 weeks in advance. His men had not recognized their boss in that moment either. Giovanni Bianchi did not commission cakes. Giovanni Bianchi did not attend children's birthday parties. Giovanni Bianchi did not stand on a terrace watching a woman in a blue dress and forget to breathe. Aria turns and sees him. Their eyes meet across 30 feet of garden and suddenly the space between them feels like nothing. She sets down the flowers and walks toward him, and with each step her confidence increases like the volume on music you have been waiting to hear your whole life. You came, she says. I have been here the whole time, he replies. You know what I mean. He does. She means, you chose this. You chose us. You chose to stand in daylight at a child's birthday party instead of in shadows counting money. The choice matters because it cost him something. For a man like Giovanni, gentleness is the most dangerous weapon he has ever wielded. Emma appears suddenly the way children do, materializing from between shrubs like a small, determined ghost. She is 7 now, no longer the 4-year-old who barely spoke. She wears a white dress with flowers in her hair. Rosa braided them this morning while Emma hummed the lullaby that Aria taught her. Vivi! Emma shouts, and she runs toward Aria with the kind of speed that suggests she is not asking permission anymore. Aria catches her and lifts her, spinning in a circle while Emma's laughter breaks like glass bells across the garden. Giovanni watches them, and something in his chest shifts. It is not pain. It is recognition. This is what he built his empire for, he realizes. Not for money, not for power, not for control. He built it so that moments like this could exist. So that a child could laugh without fear. So that a woman who was invisible could finally be seen. Later, after the cake is cut and the presents are opened, Giovanni finds Aria alone on the garden bench. The sun is moving lower, painting everything amber and rose. He sits beside her, close enough that she can feel the warmth radiating from him, far enough that she can breathe. I have something for you, he says, and he pulls a small box from his jacket pocket. Inside is a leather journal, the color of aged cognac, with her grandmother's recipes transcribed in careful handwriting on every page. Rosa's handwriting. And then after the last recipe, blank pages. Waiting. For new recipes, Giovanni says. New memories. The ones you get to choose. Aria opens it with shaking hands. There is her grandmother's handwriting, the careful loops, the notes in the margins about which grandchild liked which flavor. There is her own favorite memory written in someone else's hand, the day she made the almond cookies and her grandmother said, Aria, you have magic in your hands. There is the date she left home, written in pencil like a timestamp. There is the date she arrived at the mansion, and there is a note, the day everything changed. Giovanni, she whispers, and her voice breaks like she is breaking herself open. I kept it safe, he says. Rosa did. When Douglas took everything, when he made you disappear, she kept one thing safe. Your book. She knew you would need it. Aria closes her eyes and tears fall like rain finally coming after months of drought. Giovanni lets her cry. He does not try to fix it. He just sits beside her in the golden light and lets her feel everything she has been carrying. I did not know, she says. I know. Emma runs back to them then, breathless and flushed. Vivi. Will you make those cookies? The ones from your grandma's book. Aria looks at her grandmother's journal, at the blank pages waiting to be filled, at Emma's hopeful face. She looks at Giovanni, who is looking at her like she is the only real thing in a world of shadows. Which ones? She asks. All of them, Emma says immediately. I want to taste all of them and remember them forever. Giovanni smiles. It is the kind of smile that transforms his face from dangerous to human. Then you will make all of them, he says to Aria. And I will remember them with her. As the sun moves lower and the garden fills with the purple light of early evening, the party continues around them. Rosa laughs with the kitchen staff. Carlo and Sal help Emma blow out the candles one more time because she wants to make the same wish twice to make sure it comes true. The mansion that was once a fortress of glass and steel and careful distance has become a home where people gather and laugh and celebrate the kind of survival that looks like ordinary happiness. Giovanni and Aria stand at the edge of the gathering, watching. He takes her hand fully now, in front of everyone. The gesture is simple, but it means everything. It means he is not ashamed. It means she is not his secret anymore. It means in this moment, the most powerful man in Las Vegas is holding the hand of a woman who was once invisible, and he is not afraid of what anyone thinks. Do you remember, Giovanni asks quietly, when you asked me why I helped you? I remember, she says. I told you it was because the people who hurt you believed you were nobody. But that was not the complete truth. He pauses. The complete truth is that I helped you because from the moment I found you in that warehouse, I could not stand the thought of a world where you believed it too. And now, watching you, here, free, building something with the foundation, helping girls like Maya find their way out, I realize something. You did not just save Emma that night. You saved me. Aria turns to look at him fully. From what? From becoming a man who forgot how to see people. Who protected by controlling. Who loved by possessing. You reminded me that strength is not in the grip of your hand. It is in the choice to open it. He touches her cheek gently. You taught me that redemption is real. Aria leans her head against his shoulder and they stand together as the sun finishes its descent. The sky turns deep purple, then navy, then black, studded with stars that have watched this story unfold from the beginning. Emma's laughter carries across the garden. The sound of ice clinking in glasses. Rosa's voice singing softly. The storm has passed completely now. What remains is something quiet and strong and real. Close on Aria's face as she watches Emma play. Her expression is peaceful. Certain. Finally, completely free. Douglas Hale is serving 40 years in federal prison. His cell is 8 feet by 10 feet. Diana Whitfield lost everything she built through cruelty, and her name became synonymous with corruption. But Aria Sinclair gained everything she thought she had lost, her voice, her freedom, her future, and the knowledge that sometimes the people we save are the ones who save us in return. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. Share it with someone who needs to hear that survival is possible, that redemption is real, that the storm will pass. Subscribe because tomorrow we have another story that will remind you why love, protection, and justice matter. Drop a comment telling us what hit you hardest about Aria's journey. We read every single one. The darkest chapters of your life do not write your ending. The moment you choose to act, to save someone, to trust someone, to fight for yourself, that is when your real story begins. The storm will pass and you are far stronger than you think. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. We wish you good health, a joyful life, and days filled with peace and happiness. We will see you again in the next video. Goodbye.